गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। Today we're going to talk of India-Pakistan nuclear dyad and examine if there is space for conventional ops. And to examine all this and discuss this topic, which demands understanding beyond the normal, I have with me Brigadier Sahgal. After all, he's spoken to all of us about India, Pakistan, and nuclear issues. Sir, good evening and welcome to Gana Shot once again. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, sir. It's always an honor to be on your show.
Right. Thanks, sir. I'll just set the stage for what we're going to speak so that people understand this whole story. Ever since Op Sindoor, the nuclear balance in Pakistan has gone for a toss. Earlier, their whole story was nuclear blackmail. We'll play the subconventional role. If you try to go conventional, we'll go nuclear. Right. And that was the story which we went by. And that was the deterrence policy which they had. And that kind of a blackmail deterrence worked for a long time. Right, worked in Op Vijay, worked later, everything, except that it got badly bust up during Op Sindoor. Actually, the precursor to this was in Balakot, when we hit Jabba Top and used Air Force and crossed into Pakistan's territory, crossed the IB to hit Jabba Top. We had already, pushed the nuclear doctrine to the back and, to the wall. But we broke it now. So Pakistan has got no credible nuclear deterrent left with them. That's their problem, and they're in panic. And we've discussed this earlier. The kind of thinking which is coming out of Pakistan indicates that they don't know where they are heading. These days the only thing which comes out of Pakistan media is, and it gets echoed by the Chinese and the Americans, is, Pakistan hit 6 Indian aircraft. Pakistan, it was a victorious nation. And all this imaginary victory and imaginary 6 aircraft which they've hit, right, finds echo in their nuclear panic. I mean, that's the way I put it. They are in nuclear panic. So what is this nuclear panic all about? Let me highlight a few issues. Okay, see the kind of articles which are coming out. This is recently, about 4 days back, by a person called Rabia Akhtar, who says, it talks about their problem with India's new missile gambit. What is this new missile gambit? As we all know, we've got Agni 5, we are looking at a massive ordnance penetrator kind of a thing with Agni. The USA has the B-2s and B-52s to deliver the massive ordnance penetrators, like the way they did in Iraq. We're not going that way. We're going the missile route. And we're looking at Agni 5. There are a couple of versions coming. There's all in the news. But it sent panic buttons all over Pakistan, and everyone is pressing it simultaneously. And then, of course, Ijaz Haider, he's written, can Pakistan, India nuclear deterrence hold? All this comes in Dawn, which is the top newspaper. And in fact, today also I heard Ijaz Haider, talking something about how, Pakistan's tactical nuclear weapons lowered or rather closed the deterrence gap and all that, which we broke. And that is in tatters, in fact. And then you find articles coming about India's nuclearization of ocean and it's a global threat. Now, suddenly, with the help of China and USA, they're trying to paint as if India is a destabilizing force in this area and in the wider world. Well, be that as it may, immediately after, Op Sindoor, this article had come out about, how nuclear deterrence was shattered and how they had to rebuild it, how they had to think of new red lines and enforce them and all that. That's a common thread in all these analyses. And these come out as special analysis. Right? It is in this context that I thought it would be very appropriate if, Brigadier Sahgal gives his views to say, what is the new dyad coming out? Or how does it look like? Right? It is not a matter of the number of warheads. It's the quality of warheads you have. It's not only the quality of warheads you have, the kind of warheads and the delivery systems you have. It's not only the kind of delivery systems you have, it's the kind of a backup you have to stitch all this together. Right? Now, that's a different story altogether. And that leads you to something called full spectrum deterrence. Is there a match between India and Pakistan on full spectrum deterrence? Will Pakistan's partial deterrence work? Will Pakistan, do something to close this window of conventional operations which have opened up? Right? If so, what will be the shape of that? These are the questions which we have to think of. And these are the questions which they are thinking of. Right? They're thinking, how do we close this gap once again? For over 2 to 3 decades, they were very successful in closing this conventional, window for conventional operations. They've opened up it. We've opened it up, and it is, uh, rather incumbent on their planners to try and close it through one way or the other. So, with this as a background, sir, I'm sorry I took a slightly long detour into the subject.
No.
With this, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a very interesting topic, and I think you set the right stage for our discussion today. Uh, I'm going to walk you through, walk the people who are listening to me and who are watching this video through how the whole thing has panned out over the years in terms of our deterrence equations and what Ops Sindoor has changed. What has changed in Ops Sindoor, which is forcing Pakistan to recalibrate their deterrence equations. The fundamental point is that we have been nuclear countries for over 25 years plus, 27 years basically. And the whole idea of the Pakistani to develop nuclear weapon was to constrain India from waging war against Pakistan and to ensure that it continued to perpetrate low-level proxy war, cross-border proxy war in Kashmir, in its attempt to undermine the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So the issue that has happened is that the wars have not been deterred. We have, like the general rightly said, immediately after going nuclear, we had a big war in Kargil, whose Kargil Divas that we are celebrating and paying a big salute to the sacrifices made by our soldiers, and it is because of them that the country is strong and credible today. Big salute to the Kargil martyrs and the all those generals and soldiers who made that victory possible. The second was in 2016, the Uri cross-border attack, and then we had the 2019 Balakot, and now we had Ops Sindoor. So let me explain what is, from my perspective, what has been the Pakistani narrative of deterrence. The fundamental point of the Pakistani nuclear deterrence was to allow it to exploit sub-conventional thresholds and wage proxy war against India. The second element of that thing was that deal with all Indian conventional responses with their own responses with management of escalation to 2 or 3 levels as they deem fit, primarily as part of what they call quid pro quo plus response options. The fundamental principle behind the nuclear deterrence principle behind this was that should situation go out of control or if the pain of punishment is high, they would strive to use tactical nuclear weapons. Now, in this is a fundamental change in perspective which our people must understand. From an Indian perspective, nuclear deterrence is a political deterrence to prevent war. But in the Pakistani case, the tactical nuclear weapons were created basically to as an extension of a conventional operations in a scenario where they faced a serious reverse situation or serious situation in which they were finding it difficult to maintain the momentum of operations. So it was basically a strategy as a part of a conventional deterrence escalating to a nuclear level. The belief was that there will be a graduated response option, and the India's no force, no NFU, and the massive response options was by and large downplayed by the Pakistani planners. The third element of the deterrence was that should the tactical nuclear weapons scenario fails and there is a massive response by India or whatever response by India, they will have a second strike capability or what they call a strategic deterrence based on MRBMs and IRBMs of the nation of Shaheens and Abdils and other types who have ranges going up to 2,000 kilometers plus, hitting as far as Andaman Nicobar Islands. So this was so the strategy was called advanced in two terms. One is the full spectrum deterrence that you deter from the conventional space to the strategic space, or it was called 0 to 2175 strategy, that is from 0 to going up to the medium range ballistic missile targeting of the Indian deepest assets. The the whole issue was ambiguous, and ambiguity was pushed into this whole narrative by ill-defined red lines. The ambiguity was basically like, we will do this, we will do that, we will do that. This is my deterrence, my posture. I have a force deterrence. I have a territorial deterrence. I have a economic deterrence. All kinds of this thing. Interviews were given, etc. The whole idea was to create a degree of unpredictability in the minds of Indian planners as to what are the red lines and what time and when will the Pakistanis use the nuclear weapons. So this game, like the general rightly said, has continued till 2025. What changed in Opsandur? This is the most important fact. This 25-year hiatus has come to an end after Opsandur. Why has it come to an end? Clear declaration by India. Number one, all acts of terror, state sponsored, the culpability of the terrorist and the state will be similar. Two, India will hold that country responsible and reserve the right of response in any manner that it deems fit. Number three, we will not hesitate to attack or carry out operations against terrorist setup anywhere in that country, whether it be in Pakistani occupied GOK or within the international boundaries of Pakistan. The all acts of war, acts of terror, will hereinafter get massive Indian response depending on how India sees that act of terror. There's a lot of confusion in the minds of people that will every terror will lead to a massive Indian response. No, we are not foolish. The response will be directly in proportion or as we perceive how it perpetuated the degree of consequences of that action, and India will thereafter respond. Now, what happened? The there is one more element of the Pakistani strategy. The the that element of the Pakistani strategy was and has continued to be is that should the going become tough, Pakistan would seek third party intervention. They did it in Balakot, they did it in this time. The whole idea is to cry wolf, cry global wolf, cry countries will go to war, it will lead to large scale destruction, to major 1.4 billion people and 300 billion people, they will go large scale destruction, etc., etc. So, Op Sindoor has changed all that. What did India do? India did shifted the narrative from just responding in a measured manner to major kinetic attacks once Pakistan escalated. How did it happen? On 7th of May, when India launched attacks on terrorist infrastructure of Pakistan, India was very clear. India conveyed it to Pakistan. This issue is not generally appreciated in the international media. India conveyed it to Pakistan that we have carried out attacks against your terrorist infrastructure. We have no other interest in escalation hereinafter. The Pakistani response was that we have done what you have done what you have done, and we will respond. And the next day, Pakistani attacked with missile and drones. Both are civilian as well as military infrastructure. And from there onwards, India took the initiative, destroyed their air defense systems, launched attacks on the 12 major frontline airfields, attacked their new command and control center, and a situation was prevailing on 10th of May. A situation was prevailing on 10th of May that Pakistan stood defenseless. We could have done anything at that time. Now, the point which comes about is this, is that the Pakistani nuclear experts are now trying to evaluate what happened. What were the consequences of these actions? The fundamental issue that has happened is that so far, the space which was supposed to be escalated through graduated response within 48 hours has reached the strategic depth of Pakistan. And the strategic depth of Pakistan was being targeted. And yet, not a man has crossed the border. It was kinetic attack. So the conventional space which Pakistani held dear as part of his deterrence calculus was now completely breached by India's missile systems, which had reached the ultimate strategic depth of Pakistan. So the strategic space which the Pakistani thought to maneuver as part of his deterrence metrics, and we'll talk about the red lines, etc., stood hugely exposed. So what happened to the quid pro quo plus strategy? Now, this is what the general was trying to say, and this is what that article is trying to say. We had to evaluate the destruction, the depth, and the complete ill preparedness of Pakistan to deal with that had created a scenario that Pakistan, although a nuclear weapon state, had little or no response option. So this is an issue which is very, very significant. So This created what I call a deterrence dilemma in the minds of the Pakistanis. What do they do? What has happened? Strikes have happened inside Pakistan. Are they going to start using nuclear weapons? For what joy? What is the role of nuclear weapons in this scenario? The nuclear weapons are intact. The red lines have not been crossed, the so called red lines, perceivably. No National Command Authority meeting took place. So the concern now is that every time a situation like this arises, India will upgrade its conventional strike capability through non-contact stand-up attack systems, credibility that it is creating, while maintaining a strong dissuasive posture on the ground, which prevents any ground level escalation, and that will create a scenario where the deterrence equations completely go out of the window. Thus, deterrence equations are no longer viable. What do you do with the tactical nuclear weapons? What are you going to fire the tactical nuclear weapons? What has happened to the whole elements of deterrence that you had put together, that I will respond in this manner, India, if that you cross my red line, I will respond this thing with my tactical nuclear weapons, and I will your response will be there. But there is no potential. What India was taken out, this is the most important issue. India has taken out nuclear weapons out of the equation in this stand of conflict. And any nuclear escalation, the onus of which will be at on Pakistan. The next important, I'll stop here and let General have some remarks over
Yes,
there.
sir. I think you made a very valid point, which I thought, let me reinforce it in a different manner to everyone who's listening, because I think this is the crux. This is the crux of the whole problem. Why did their, let me ask a rhetoric, why did their nuclear doctrine fail? Their nuclear doctrine simply failed because their nuclear doctrine was oriented to a graduated response. The tactical nuclear weapon which they flaunted, right, based on Nasser, was fundamentally to stop our cold start doctrine. Though we don't have a cold start doctrine, it's been shelved a long time back. But in their perception, it was a cold start doctrine. They never visualized that our hot start doctrine, which we adopted in, Op Sindoor, will hit Sargoda, or it will hit Kirana Hills. Whether it hit or not, I don't know. Or
No, they have acknowledged it now.
they have not acknowledged it. They didn't expect the fact that, look, my command authority, which or my command center in Chaklala will be hit. So you not only upended their thinking of, okay, this is the way India will attack us. If India attacks us this way, this is the way we'll do, right? And then it'll be an escalation ladder will go up, the snakes and ladder type. We did something completely different. We hit him in the rear, simultaneous, non-linear operations. In the army, and in fact, I wouldn't say in the army, the military stock of simultaneity and non-linearity. We exhibited it completely. And they didn't know what to do. And within no time, they were defenseless. And as per their old nuclear doctrine, which, this chap Kidwai also said, you'll agree with me, sir, is that if the major defenses of Pakistan are down, we will have to do, have a nuclear response. In this case, every defense of Pakistan was down. Down, finished. They're defenseless, like what he said. On 10th morning, Pakistan was defenseless. And dare say, I think they're still defenseless today. Because their air defense systems have not been, recuperated. Some of their airfields are still not ready. And what airfields they would have done some patch up or not it, made up. They can't still fly.
In
That
middle of August, they'll operate.
yeah,
That's what.
right. It's still not there. There not times Rahim Yar Khan is a pivotal airfield in the front. That's still not operational. That one at Chaklala, Noor Khan Air Base, where that command center has been taken out, that whole building has come down. What was there in that underground storage site at Murid? They've just put a tarpaulin. They don't know. We don't know what it is because nothing is there inside, which is safe. So dare say today in Pakistan, if I put it, in a bit of a humorous manner, it is Nangu Pangu. It doesn't have anything, right? At this point of time, if anything happens in Pakistan, or rather from India, what will they do? Will they press the nuclear button? That's the question which everyone needs to understand. And all these fancy ideas of theirs that we are a nuclear power, we know nuclear deterrence, we'll do nuclear blackmail, has all come unhinged. And today, why I put those four articles, if you read those four articles, they are searching for the ground level. That ground beneath their feet has been shifted. Right? So far, for this business of graduated response, this is the way we'll operate, red lines, and all that. There are other factors, and I'll leave it to the brigadier to continue. So please.
Okay. So the story doesn't end here. So as you say, I mean, you want to grant their planners some sort of a good understanding, which I mean, it's always good to respect your opponents. So the new narrative is being weaved. What is the new narrative? The new narrative is the Pakistani quid pro quo plus now aims at preventing an all-out conflict. India's reckless strikes have expanded geographic scope and deterrence narrative. The bottom line, India has now brought the entire Pakistani state within the scope of its targeting. So we have to now rethink how do we recoup our deterrence space. The second element which they are trying to do, which the general alluded to, was the India's development of what we call strategic non-nuclear weapons, SNNWs. Now, Agni 5 with a 7 to 8 ton warhead is being developed as a penetrator and bunker buster, deep penetrator, bunker buster. But that's not the only strategic non-nuclear weapon that we had. For all practical purposes, BrahMos acted as a SNNW. It was a strategic non-nuclear weapon which degraded its key components of his air power and his air mobility and his air defenses. So the question that now they are facing is, now they are creating a narrative. They say, if India uses these kind of strategic non-nuclear weapons, they will be construed as a use of a nuclear weapons, as the damage would be the same. So the whole narrative which is being raised, that India can launch a decapitating counter force strike on Pakistani nuclear assets with these weapon systems. Now, the whole idea is to push the agenda in the international arena of India's irresponsible behavior. A. B. To, within their own country, create a narrative or developing some kind of a counter to these systems. The Russians call it the Oreshink movement. This is the Oreshink movement of the Pakistanis. That India, with their capacity and the capability of having a strategic non-nuclear weapons which can do a large amount of damage, is a major game changer. For the information of my Pakistani friends who are listening to me, they should not be surprised by this. We are already faced with a similar threat from our northern neighbor. The northern neighbor has two types of strategic missile systems. It has got a nuclear strategic missile system and it is a non-nuclear strategic missile system doing exactly the same work that we are trying to achieve. So what we are trying to do is nothing very new. What we are trying to do is creating a credible capability of studying those 21 deeply buried targets which you have developed should the situation so arise and should there be a need. So it is a deterrence capability so that the other side understands that I have that capacity, I have that capability of undertaking such kind of operations and not basic necessity of use. So as far as India is concerned, India is enhancing its deterrence by developing its capabilities. India has no interest in taking out Pakistani nuclear assets. Why would we need to take out the nuclear assets? If we need to take out the assets, we will take out your strategic, operational strategic assets, which are the backbone of your systems, your electronic warfare system, your nuclear hub, your logistic hubs, other elements which support your this thing should a situation arise. So bottom line is that we are not developing these systems. Like, Americans use them for destruction of nuclear sites. You might think that India would do it. No, we have a treaty. We have a treaty on not hitting each other's nuclear installations. So creating panic is not a right idea, and I would strongly suggest to Pakistanis to stop desisting from this kind of a narrative game. The third narrative which they are trying to create is the role of EDTs, and now they are talking about is how these EDTs are shaping the new strategic space. There is a kinetic strategic space which is driven by conventional and nuclear and precision strikes. There is now what are they calling about a technology strategic space which is being driven by ISR, EW, drone storms, and real-time targeting. And there is a cyber strategic space which basically ends up decoupling nuclear command and control systems. These are elements which will continue to play in any country's evolution of its military capabilities and its strategic capabilities, and that's the reason why we are spending money on developing emerging technologies. As indeed Pakistan is doing, as indeed you are trying to do with the support of Chinese and developing these kind of capacities and capabilities through third party support. So this is a new element they are trying to say, and this is now being touted as a huge amount of a destabilizing factor in bilateral equations. And here it is also important for me to highlight is that while we are discussing the India-Pak Dyad, but from Indian perspective, there is no Indo-Pak Dyad. There is India-Pak-China triad in which Pakistanis and Chinese are collusive partners operating in collusion, both in the conventional, as we have seen during Op Sindoor, and I have no doubt through the availability of Baidu, through of advanced air links, they would also support them in the strategic space. Now, the point which we need to understand is this. India, importantly, it's important to understand this. India, through Op Sindoor, has clearly and credibly defined its red lines. Cross-border terror and state-sponsored terror is not acceptable. We will respond. Now it is Pakistan which has to rethink its own red lines. You have to understand and rethink as to what is it that you want. You cannot carry out terror. If you carry out state-sponsored terror, there shall be retaliation, and that retaliation would lead to the kind of non-conventional conflict or other types of conflict as we deem necessary in the future. So, to my point of view, is the issue which should, with the message I want to leave with my Pakistani friends, is that there is two things that they must take cognizance from India. One is certitude of response. What I mean by certitude of response is there shall be a response, and that's number two is credibility of the response. Certitude plus credibility of that response, and we will carry out all these actions of our will still be dictated by our no first use policy, despite the fact enough is being written both in the Pakistani academia as well as in the Western academia that India is rethinking of its first use doctrine, etc., which is absolute nonsense. India's is wedded to is no first use and credible minimum deterrence, and both are very much part and parcel of India's narrative. But that, having said that, there is a perception in the Pakistani mind is that the India's response doctrines are graduated response doctrines. What they must understand is, given the development in the ISR, EW, our air defense system, including our capital air defense system that we have created, and the advances that are being made, the response mechanisms have changed. You rightly think that you can launch your first strike on India under any of the circumstances, tactical, nuclear weapons, strategic response mechanism, whatever you want to do. But the response from the other side will be in minutes, if not seconds. So, therefore, going down the path of mutually assured destruction is not the right path. And the second message is to think and believe that credibility of nuclear deterrence can allow you to play around in the conventional space is a fallacy that you have to give up. I think I'll stop here.
Yeah, thanks a lot, sir. I think you clarified this very nicely. And I'd like to again reinforce this whole story. I mean, for anyone who's listening to this, please understand whatever India is developing, like what Sir has said, is to guard India against Pakistan and China and their seamless support. I'll not even use collusive, seamless support to each other in all fields. Right? Okay. Given that situation, we are also very clear that we need to have adequate capability to deter China. If we can deter China, right, Pakistan is fair game. Let's be very clear. If I can deter China well, which we have the capability of doing so, Pakistan is fair game. One. Second, all rules of conventional deterrence and all rules of nuclear deterrence have gone for a toss. It is well understood that you're finding a new space. And that new space will start back at Sargodha. Let's be very clear. Because tomorrow's response will start there or wherever. So, how do you respond to anything which India does? Right? Is one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, would you like to instigate a terrorist incident to start a response which you can't handle? The fundamental thing of this whole story is stop your terrorist activities. Because if you do something, you can't handle it. You can keep counting 6-0, 6-0, 6-0 for the next set, but we'll win the tennis match. Okay, don't think you won the set. You are not won the set. You've been spanked badly, right? The third aspect is that our non-nuclear capability is increasing manifold. Okay, as much as everyone talks of a triad capability, nuclear triad capability, let me assure everyone who's listening, and this is probably tomorrow's way of fighting wars. Every country will hereafter develop a non-nuclear triad capability against counter force targets, not counter value targets, counter force targets, and critical counter force targets, a non-nuclear triad capability. So this capability which will come at Pakistan, right, which will manifest into the depths and innards of Pakistan, could be from land, air, or sea. I mean, there should be no doubt. As Admiral Pramod, he said, in the last DGMO's briefing, he said maybe the next time it will be Navy which will lead the whole story. So the paradigm has changed. The floor space has shifted. The only way this floor space gets reset is you stop your terror activities. You don't stop terror activities, all bets are off. Right? And something which everyone has to understand, right? And today also I heard Mr. Ijaz Haidar, I'm taking his name because I heard him talk. He spoke of the value of strategic restraint which we exhibited during the time of Bombay attacks, and the value India got out of that strategic restraint which we did then, we exercised then. Well, we exercised strategic restraint at that point of time because at that point of time in 2009, our capabilities were limited when Mumbai happened, right? And we were on a path of development which we didn't want to upset. Now, that strategic restraint has converted itself into strategic strength today. There's a whole difference. And that is the base from which we are operating. What we have learned then and what we have pushed the envelope post Uri, surgical strikes and Balakot has given us that fair degree of certainty, like what Brigadier Sahgal said, certitude of response, right, will be there, is taken. Please, we must take it for as a guarantee. Okay, and I can assure you, as an ex-gunner, right, I know what I'm talking of. Okay, and there are very few places which Pakistan can hide its counter force targets, or what we will target as its counter force elements. Because I don't think, leave everything aside, I don't think the world has a response to BrahMos as yet. And that response won't come for the next 5 to 10 years. Take it from me. I've operated the first BrahMos in this country. You don't have a response. Neither does China have a response. And if 15 countries are lining up outside India, as per the Chinese reports, not as per my report, as per Chinese reports, that they want BrahMos, there is logic in this story. And all our BrahMoses at this point of time can rain on Pakistan. And I'm making it absolutely clear in non-diplomatic terms. It can't be worse, or it can't be more specific. And I am not interested in what our government thinks or how people are going to act. I am telling you how we Indians are going to think and how Indians are going to act. There's a larger thing beyond the government. So I'm sorry I took so much time, but I thought.
No, I know. It is a conversation, not this thing.
Right. So I thought we must message across to the Pakistanis who are listening, who keep trolling every day. We talk, we knocked off S-400, we knocked off 6 aircraft AO. You have knocked off nothing. Zero. Okay? And we know for certain, the world knows that 11 of your airfields are down, 9 of your headquarters are down, half your air defense is down, and more. Right? A fair lot of your people have died. We know that. and you are now scared of where we will hit you next, right? You might down our entire air force in that if it comes to the push to the shove, but by Joe, Pakistan won't survive. That I can assure you. So yes, sir.
No, I just want to conclude by just saying is that the bottom line for both countries is this: we cannot and should not depend on the old ideas of the Cold War in terms of looking at deterrence equations. We should not look at the whole ideas about strategic stability from the perspective that was defined during the Cold War, or, etc. The what we have to do and understand is this: is that our bilateral relationships, our bilateral equations, our bilateral contests will not be defined by nuclear weapons. This is something which we need to understand. The luxury of use of nuclear weapons to both countries is not there. And as far as India is concerned, India has repeatedly maintained, from Indian perspective, nuclear weapons are a political weapons to stop wars. They are not for fighting wars. So my my submission to the Pakistanis is that we look at your doctrine and try to align it with the no first use doctrine. Align, and within this whole relook at your nuclear doctrines, try and relook at your conventional and uh, low conventional options. Do not think of terror as a destabilizing strategy for India. It will not destabilize us. We shall deal with it, and by continuing to harp to your own public and people that India is doing this in Balochistan, India is doing that, and taking the narrative away from your own actions in Kashmir, this policy also will not work. India has no interest in Pakistan's instability. Like we believe and we expect Pakistan to have no interest in its own instability. Somebody asked me the weaponization of terror. My simple question was that for 4 long years you were under FTAF radar. You were marked as a terrorist sponsoring state. Why did that happen? You turn around and tell me that I have changed a large number of laws. We have improved. We have done this. Good show. Keep it up. But do not use every time you have internal problems, internal situations evolving. You use Kashmir as a card to finger India and to create the narrative which you are trying to create within your own country now. This will not last. Narratives do not provide food. Narratives do not provide oil. Narratives do not provide jobs. Economy does. So humble submission, humble suggestion is, let's not get into this game of one-upmanship on deterrence. Let's not get into this large number of articles being written on weaponization of terror and how India is trying to do this or that against them. No, you have certain requirements from your strategic perspective, your conventional perspective. Please invest in them. Sure, it's your country, you have to security. But we will also do the same thing. If my security is your insecurity, that's your problem. I cannot help that. Like similarly, every day there's a new element of Chinese military power that keeps coming out. Should I start getting excited about it? Should I start writing articles in the press to say this is Chinese will do this? No. The whole idea basically is this thing is we take cognizance of it and we see how much impact that is have on our security, and we'll take reciprocal action. Period. That's it. And last point is we are not interested in war with Pakistan. We're not interested in having bad relationship with Pakistan. All that we want to do, tell you, is the terror and talks, and you cannot use terror as a strategy to bring India onto the on the discussion table. As long as you understand this simple point, we can go do very well for marks with each other. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, sir. This final thing I'd like to put on record what my Prime Minister has said. He said very clearly, no more nuclear blackmail from Pakistan. This is what when he said when he addressed the nation. So Pakistan can forget about nuclear blackmail. And he said the next round of talks with Pakistan will be on POK. So there's no talk on Kashmir, right? Forget it. Try as Pakistan may to do whatever it wants to do, project whatever narrative it wants to as a nation which is great and yeah, well, please carry on. We have no issues with it. But it doesn't have anything to do with us. We will treat you on your actions. We will not treat you on your narratives. Your narratives will buy you misery with us if you try anything funny. Right? All the best. We are not interested in talking to you. We are not interested in fighting with you. We are not interested in doing anything with you. That's what my Prime Minister has said. But if you do anything with us, then be prepared for your Orshnik moment.